The Stanley Cup has been handed out. Some of us are taking joy in a certain team north of the border being sad about that. Plus, what can the Kings learn from the Stanley Cup champs? That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that wraps up the night in the NHL. We'll actually have some episodes during the offseason as well. And of course, a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, the NHL season is now officially over as the Florida Panthers have gone back-to-back following a 5-1 win over the Edmonton Oilers in Game 6 of the final, and we are now officially in the offseason. Of course, the Kings have kind of been there for a little while now, but all of the games have officially concluded. And things are going to move pretty quick here in the next couple of weeks in the offseason. NHL Draft in just 10 days as we are recording this here in Los Angeles, hopefully. And the start of free agency just 14 days away, July 1st, noon Eastern time. We're going to get more into some potential offseason additions for the Kings coming up. But I wanted to start with the Oilers losing the Stanley Cup final for a second year in a row. And yes, I am happy about that. And yes, I'm being petty about that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with sports hate. A matter of fact, I think it's actually fun. I think it's an enjoyable part of being a sports fan, as long as you don't take it too seriously. You don't take it to the extreme. But I don't have any issue with fans rooting against other teams that they don't like to lose. And I certainly was a big part of that, watching and rooting for the Florida Panthers to beat the Edmonton Oilers. And if you were a Kings fan who actually wanted to see the Oilers win, does it make you feel somewhat better about the Kings losing to them for a fourth year in a row? Well, you didn't get your wish. Those of us that enjoy Schadenfreude, having enjoyment from the misfortune of others, we definitely enjoyed that. So I'm not going to lie about it. I absolutely delighted in seeing the Edmonton Oilers lose in the Stanley Cup final for a second year in a row. And for me, I was thinking about this. I'd rather lose 4 straight times in the first round of the playoffs to the same team than lose 2 times in a row in the Stanley Cup final to the same team, because that honestly is brutal. And when I look back at the 2 cup wins for the LA Kings, and if I just imagine what would have been like for the Kings to have lost both of those trips, I mean, I don't know, I might have needed some therapy after that. If the Kings had lost in the finals 2 or 3 seasons and still hadn't won a Stanley Cup, that would have been just, I mean, I don't even want to think about it, to be honest with you. But if you're the Edmonton Oilers, though, and if you're a fan of a certain age, I guess I can understand this being pretty bad. But it's not like the Oilers haven't had their day in the sun. I mean, this is a franchise that won 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years in the 80s. So forgive me if I don't shed too many tears for them. Now, how will they recover from this? I don't know. The last time an NHL team made it to the Stanley Cup finals in back-to-back years and lost both times, that was the Boston Bruins in 1977 and 1978. So the Oilers should still be a good team next season. I mean, look, as long as they've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, they should be a team that's at least good enough to surround those 2 unbelievable talents with enough players to at least get them into the playoffs. But I do wonder if they can ever recover from this and get back to the Stanley Cup final again. It is the Stanley Cup, winning the Stanley Cup. The reason it's so special is because of how hard it is. And only one team is left happy at the end. And even if you make it all the way to a game 6 or a game 7 like the Oilers have had, and you lose, you just go back into the pile of all the other teams. And I know that the Oilers can say, well, we're a lot closer than the Kings are. It's true. At least it seems to be true. But in the end, they're just like us. They're just disappointed because they did not get it done. So again, I am not going to hide my enjoyment at the Edmonton Oilers losing in the Stanley Cup Finals for a second year in a row. But that is, I mean, if I can try and remove my LA Kings fandom from it, it is brutal. It is absolutely brutal to make it all that way 2 straight years and basically have nothing to show for it. As for the Stanley Cup winners, I heard something on another podcast recently about the Florida Panthers that I think the LA Kings might be able to apply to them. And certainly there's a pretty significant gap between the Florida Panthers and where the LA Kings are. But I think when you talk about what the Panthers focused on for this entire season, and I assume 2 years in a row now, I think that's something the Kings can take away from it. And the Florida Panthers do not care about the regular season. Now, of course, you have to play well enough in the regular season to make it to the playoffs. But the Panthers don't care about winning a division title. They don't care about getting home ice advantage in the playoffs, which they didn't have in any of their 4 rounds of the playoffs. What they focus on is playing a style and having an attitude during the regular season that gets them ready for the playoffs. That will be successful in the playoffs. The way they play, the way they think, the way they go about their business, the things they stress, what's talked about, what's emphasized from the first day of training camp. It's all about getting ready for the playoffs. They don't talk about, okay, it's we got a month left in the regular season. Now it's time to get ready for the playoffs. No, it is at the start of training camp that they prepare themselves. And that's not all it is. It's not just about that. They have to have the talent. There's a lot of things that have to go into it, but I think the having that mentality from the very start is where it starts. And if you're the LA Kings and you've had no playoff series wins since 2014, I mean, it has to start with a mindset. And look, again, if you're a season ticket holder and you really enjoyed this regular season for the Kings because of how well they played at home, and you want to have that fun again, I get that. I really do. I'm, my wife and I are season ticket holders of a NFL team. It's not quite the same because it's not quite as the investment in time and gas and all that kind of stuff of going to, all those 40 plus regular season games, 41 regular season games at home. If you can do that, that is quite an investment. So I get it. And I'm not suggesting that the Kings don't take the regular season seriously. Of course you have to, right? To get to where you want to be. It's not just about the mindset, but it's about taking that mindset and the style of play and doing it night in and night out as often as you can to get you ready for the playoffs. So I just think, hearing them and seeing the results, it makes a lot of sense to me for the Kings to start with that. Everything that you're working on is to better yourselves for the playoffs, like being able to trust 4 lines, playing those 4th line players in key moments, in third periods during the regular season, so that when you get into the playoffs, you can have them out there as well. And you can wear down an opponent because you're rolling 4 lines. The Panthers were a great example of that. They trust each other. It doesn't matter who it is coming in out of the lineup. Those guys all trust each other. And when teams are successful like the Panthers, obviously they've been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. They've won back-to-back titles now. You want to steal from their formula. And lots of teams are going to do that. They're going to analyze what the Panthers do, and they're going to try and apply it to themselves. But like I said, for the Kings, I think they can benefit from that mindset from day one of next season. Training camp, it's all about the playoffs. It's working for playoff success. It's doing things to prepare yourself for what is going to work in the playoffs. The standings don't matter. Home ice doesn't matter anymore. And especially for a team like the Kings, it's time to get the playoff results, right? Everything needs to be focused on the playoffs. No playoff wins since 2014. It's time to change. I did want to bring up something real quick. That our last guest, when we had our interview last week, brought up Connor Doyle from the Hockey News. He asked if we should be concerned that the LA Kings have not re-signed defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov yet. If you think they should, right? Some people don't think they should based on the high cost it's going to take to retain him. I would say this about that. If Gavrikov was 100% willing to sign with the Kings and the Kings were 100% willing to give him whatever he wanted, then I think a deal would be done by now. But when you look at kind of the landscape of what's going on, I don't think the Kings in particular should necessarily be anxious or disappointed about the fact that he hasn't signed, because none of the other guys have signed either. The only player really of any note who has signed with his team so far before free agency starts is Brock Nelson of the Colorado Avalanche, their second line center. The cap's going up. This class is not deep as far as the number of players that teams are going to be competing for. So players like Gavrikov are smart to explore what else is out there. Now, if the Kings can't sign him, if he doesn't want to come back, then obviously they need to know that going into it. And maybe things could change as we get closer and closer to the deadline. But I think one thing that we can be hopefully encouraged about as far as who the GM of the team is now, Ken Holland, this is a guy who is extremely experienced. He's been a GM a long time in different places. He's won Stanley Cups before. He's gotten another team to a Stanley Cup final. You got to believe that he has a plan in place, that he is. There's not going to be anything I can't imagine is going to surprise Ken Holland when it comes to negotiating and how he wants to go about doing this. If you go after a guy like a Mitch Marner, you have to have a plan in place. You can't let him string you out and then you miss out on doing business in other areas that might help your team. You have to have a concrete idea of how you're going into it, what the cost is going to be, what you're willing to pay, things you're willing to give up to make a trade, whatever. And if those things aren't acceptable, you got to move on to the next thing. You can't be caught getting into a negotiation, ping pong match with some other team. Meanwhile, other business is getting done. So the next couple of weeks are going to be important. We'll see if trades go down before the draft or at the draft, which certainly could happen. And then you got free agency. So I will say an experienced, steady hand on the wheel from Ken Holland. I would think that he's well prepared, has a plan in place, and we'll be looking to see how he implements that plan here in the next couple of weeks. All right. We actually heard from Ken Holland, and he had a couple of things to say in a recent interview. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether you're snacking at your desk or on a road trip or you just need a quick protein boost. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is a snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Do want to give a shout out over to the guys at the Bannerman podcast. We've had one of their co-hosts, Carl Blickian, as a guest on this show. I did see earlier on Tuesday on their X account at the Bannerman Pod. They shared a link to an interview with new LA Kings GM Ken Holland. He talked to some people from RG Media. I have no idea who that is, but good for them to get this interview. And certainly nothing earth-shattering came out of the interview. If you want to check it out, you can go to rg.org. But there were a couple things I'll share real quick. Ken Holland did comment on the Kings getting ready for a big next couple of weeks, which you're talking about. He said, quote, "If you want to make a trade, usually trades happen leading into or at the NHL draft and even coming out before July 11th. Why? Because you want to know exactly what you want and what you can do on July 1st, end quote. So again, next 9 to 10 days, if the Kings are looking to make a trade, then that is when it's going to happen. So this next week and a half certainly could be very interesting for the LA Kings. Holland also had a quote specifically about Kings captain Anze Kopitar, and he said, quote, "I know he's going into the last year of his contract, and I think more so when he comes back for training camp, I'll start talking to Pat Brisson, his agent. Obviously, I'm hoping he wants to stay and wants to play longer. I didn't think it was appropriate to be announced one day and then start asking him about that. He's one of the greatest players in the history of this franchise. He still has an amazing impact here on and off the ice. So hopefully we as a team can build something here, have a great season, and he wants to continue to be part of it." End quote. So I have speculated that next season could likely be Anze Kopitar's last season in the NHL. It would be exactly 20 pro seasons. Contract would be up. We'll see. As it stands right now, it certainly sounds like Ken Holland is thinking about the Kings captain playing beyond next season. We shall see. As for the Kings looking to make a trade, not a surprise here, but Elliot Friedman reported on his 32 Thoughts podcast that Kings defenseman Jordan Spence is likely a trade candidate. The 24-year-old is coming off his second full NHL season. He had 4 goals and 28 points in 79 games. Those were career highs. He is a bit undersized at 5'11", right shot, though, defenseman and a good puck mover makes him, I think, attractive to other teams. Friedman said about Spence being moved, quote, "I just don't think that the Kings feel that Spence and Brandt Clarke on the right side work together, or together works. They just don't feel that there's room for 2 of them," end quote. Spence is entering the final year of his contract. His cap hit is $1.5 million for the upcoming season. I got to be honest, I didn't hear it. I just saw the quote from Elliot Friedman. I don't really understand the comment about Brandt Clarke and Jordan Spence not working. I don't really know what that means. It's obviously a little bit vague. I've always said I like Jordan Spence. I've liked him for a while, but it is pretty clear that Jim Hiller didn't trust him in the playoffs. And if you don't trust a player and you're not going to play him when it matters most, and Hiller's still going to be the head coach, so he's the guy whose opinion matters, then I can understand why they might want to move him. As for Spence, I thought he was one of the players in the Kings exit interview, to me, that came off as someone that was pretty upset, and not like the players were obviously upset the way the season ended, but it was almost like they were more bummed out than angry. I thought Jordan Spence was angry, and I don't think it was all about just losing in the playoffs. I think he was upset with the role that he did or didn't play in the playoffs, and I can't say that I really blame him. So he does look. Jordan Spence doesn't have a say if he gets moved or not. He doesn't have any kind of protection, and he doesn't have a no trade clause or a no movement clause. So, but I do think Jordan Spence, I don't think he would be all that upset if he was sent somewhere else, another place where the coach will trust him, another place where the coach might envision a bigger role for him. I think he's a pretty young, talented guy. I don't think he'll ever be a superstar player or anything like that, but I think he can be a very solid, young, puck-moving defenseman, a guy who can obviously run your power play as well. If it happens, I would hate to see him go, but like I said, if the coach doesn't trust him, if he's not going to use him when it matters most, then you need to get somebody in here who can be used. Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period reported that the Kings have been talking with the Pittsburgh Penguins about a potential trade. Pagnotta mentioned Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, and Erik Karlsson. I would love to get Brian Rust. He's 33, right shot, right winger, exactly what the Kings have been looking for. 31 goals, 65 points in 71 games last season, all career highs. He has been a solid 20-plus goal scorer and 40 to 50 point producer pretty much every year. He has no protection as far as a no trade clause or no movement clause. And he's signed for the next 3 years at just over $5 million per season. That's great production. That's a great contract. I'd love to see the Kings be able to do it. Rickard Rakell, you might remember, is a guy we talked about the Kings maybe going after at the trade deadline. 32 years old, another right shot, right winger. Also career highs last year in both goals and points with 35 goals and 70 points. Now, Rakell does have an 8-team list that he cannot be traded to, so a limited no trade clause. I would doubt the Kings would be on his list of teams that he wouldn't want to go to. He signed for the next 3 seasons at $5 million per year, so another good contract. The Erik Karlsson name I don't get. He's 35 years old. He's a right shot defenseman. He's all offense, no defense. I just don't see him being a fit with the Kings in any way. Rust and Rakell, yes, for sure. The Penguins are a young team, so they're not looking to win right away. So they wouldn't be looking to get a piece that was probably going to help them now. They're looking for younger players. Jordan Spence is still young. Alex Ferrier is still young, and they would be interested in the Kings' first-round pick, I would think as well. Now, if the Kings be going to be able to offer the Penguins more than other teams, don't know. But I think Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell are a couple of guys that could be very interesting with the LA Kings. Another player that is a right shot, right winger, reportedly now available is Troy Terry of the Anaheim Ducks. This one's a surprise if it's true. He's going into year 3 of a 7-year deal that he signed with the Ducks, and he was signed by the current GM, Pat Verbeek. So I don't know what the change of course would be on that. He's under contract through 2029 at $7 million per season. He has a 10-team no-trade list. He's 27 years old. He's not as productive as Brian Rust or Rickard Rakell, but a consistent 20-goal, 50-point producer. Had a career-high 37 goals and 67 points back in the 2021-22 season. Of course, the thing you first think of, though, when you hear that a Duck is available, would the Ducks and Kings actually do business with each other? It certainly doesn't happen very often when you look at the history between the two teams. As a matter of fact, there's never been a trade between the Kings and Ducks that was a player-for-player swap. There's been a couple of trades that involved just draft picks being swapped for each other, and there were 2 trades that involved a player going one way and draft picks going the other. The only time the LA Kings got a player in a trade from the Anaheim Ducks was September 30th of 2008 when they got defenseman Sean O'Donnell for a 2009 third-round conditional draft pick. On February 26th of 2008, that was the only time the Ducks got a player from the Kings for a draft pick. The Kings sent goalie Jean-Sébastien Aubin to the Ducks for a 2008 seventh-round draft pick. Apparently, the Ducks like goalies whose first name is John Sebastian. But he never played for the Ducks. Maybe played for him in their minor league system, but he never played a game for the actual Anaheim Ducks. So that's it. That's the list. It's not quite an impressive list of moves ever between the Kings and the Ducks. So it doesn't seem like they're maybe that interested. But you've got 2 GMs running those teams now that haven't been there that long. Pat Verbeek has no history with the Ducks. He's been there a few years now. And obviously Ken Holland is brand new to the LA Kings. So I don't think those 2 men would be opposed to doing business with each other if it was beneficial to both sides. The Ducks are a young team. They're on the rise. They just made a move to get a veteran player in Chris Kreider. So I don't know. I would be very surprised, though, if the Kings and Ducks pulled off any kind of a trade. Time to look at another potential Kings first-round pick with the NHL Draft coming up. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. All right, the NHL Draft is coming up, and I'm hoping to be out there in person to provide you guys some great content for the NHL Draft in Los Angeles. I have not been approved for my credential yet. Maybe now that the finals are over, the powers that be over at the NHL are now going to turn their attention to the draft, and hopefully that'll get approved or not. I'll have an answer here pretty soon. But again, the draft is fast approaching, and more mock drafts are coming out in the next week. And one of the most respected draft analysts is Corey Pronman of The Athletic. We have quoted him a few times on this show when talking about the draft. In his latest mock draft, which was updated on Tuesday, he has the LA Kings with the number 24 pick selecting center Will Horkoff from the University of Michigan. Now, Horkoff is 6'4", 190 pounds, listed as a center. Pronman said about Horkoff, quote, "His stock has been up notably this season after a great second half. I expect him to go in the 20s come draft day. LA would ideally add a true center at this pick, and there aren't a ton of great options, so it defaults to the likely NHL winger who is huge and has a high skill level." And that was, again, Corey Pronman talking about Will Horkoff. Ian Horkoff's first college season at the University of Michigan this past year, only played 18 games, 4 goals and 10 points as a freshman. Will Horkoff is the son of a former NHL player in Sean Horkoff, who played over 1,000 NHL games. Interesting that Pronman has Horkoff going to LA, sandwiched in between two other players that we've talked about that could go to the Kings. That would be defenseman Blake Fiddler, another son of an NHL player. Pronman has Fiddler going one pick ahead of the Kings at number 23. And then at pick number 25, one pick after the Kings, he has forward Malcolm Spence, who we've had three different draft analysts predict that the Kings would be picking him. So another name to keep in mind, Will Horkoff, possibly for the LA Kings at the upcoming NHL draft. I did have a quick correction I wanted to make about something I said recently, and I'm pretty sure I've said it more than once. Talking about the Kings free agent signings, I have lumped in Warren Foegele, Joel Edmondson, and Tanner Jeannot together. Now, they were all acquired before last season, but they were not all free agent signings. Foegele and Edmondson were. Tanner Jeannot was not. Tanner Jeannot was acquired in a trade from the Tampa Bay Lightning. So just for the record, Tanner Jeannot was not a free agent signing in the offseason. He was acquired in a trade. A little bit of Kings news to pass along for any of our listeners or viewers in the Idaho area. We've got our crew in Coeur d'Alene. The LA Kings are going to play the Utah Mammoth on September 30th in Boise, Idaho at the Idaho Central Arena. So any Kings fans in Idaho, Western Oregon, Northern Nevada, or Utah who maybe don't get a chance to see the Kings in person that often, circle that one on your calendar. Again, that is September the 30th in Boise, Idaho, Kings versus the Mammoth. Not that it really matters, but I think this is a Kings home game. I believe that's what it's listed as. I did check to see if the old Idaho Steelheads were still in existence, and for most of you, this will mean nothing. But a long time ago, I used to broadcast games for the Fresno Falcons. They played in the West Coast Hockey League and the ECHL. And the Steelheads were a big rival in both those leagues with Fresno. Unfortunately, the Falcons do not exist anymore. But I was glad to see the Steelheads are still around. They're playing in the ECHL, and they play their home games at the arena where that preseason game is going to be played. Again, September 30th, Boise, Idaho, LA Kings versus the Utah Mammoth in a preseason NHL game. All right, for you everydayers, those of you listen and watch Locked On Kings every day, coming up this week, we will continue our look at off-season targets for the Kings, both in free agency and in trades. We'll look back at a Kings player from this past season, talk about how they did and what is to come for them, and we'll continue to look at any potential draft targets for the Kings as well. And we'll have a special interview at some point this week, and we'll cap it all off with our fan feedback show. If you want to send an email to the show for any reason, including the feedback show, it's lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'd love for you to post your comments in the comments section. And also stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.